Listen, there's a name you probably haven't heard enough about, but trust me, after today, you'll never forget it. And honestly, the world of entertainment just lost one of its most magical forces, someone who literally shaped the moves of the biggest stars you've watched on stage. And what I'm about to tell you is going to hit different, because this man touched lives in ways most people will never understand. So buckle up, because this story is about legacy, grace, and a talent that made superstars look superhuman. Paul Roberts just passed away at 52 years old. And before you think you don't know him, let me stop you right there, because you've absolutely seen his work. You've watched his choreography without even realizing it. And the tributes pouring in from A-list celebrities are revealing just how irreplaceable this man truly was. But here's what's really getting me. The way he died tells you everything about how he lived. And I'm going to break down why this loss is hitting the entertainment industry so incredibly hard right now. On September 26, 2025, Paul Roberts took his final bow. But wait, there's something about the circumstances that's making this even more emotional. Something about the battle he fought that nobody really knew about. And the grace he showed until the very end is honestly teaching us all a lesson about dignity. But let me tell you who announced this first, because that detail alone will show you the kind of love this man inspired. His partner, Phil Griffin, posted on Instagram, and the photo he chose, man, it speaks volumes, along with the simple but devastating text that read, "Paul Roberts, 1973 to 2025, you passed as you lived, full of grace." And those words hit me, because how many of us can say we live with that kind of grace, let alone leave this world that way? But there's more to this caption that reveals the real story behind his final days. The full caption explained that on the evening of September 26th, after what Phil described as a courageous battle with cancer, Paul passed away gently at home, surrounded by his family. And here's the thing that's getting me choked up. His departure, much like his life, was filled with grace. And I keep coming back to that word grace because in an industry known for drama and chaos, Paul Roberts was apparently the complete opposite. But you want to know what's really wild? The roster of people he worked with reads like a who's who of music royalty, and I'm about to drop some names that'll make you realize you've definitely seen this man's genius in action. Paul didn't just work with One Direction, though that's probably where younger fans recognize him from. This man choreographed for Katy Perry, and if you've ever watched one of her explosive performances and thought, damn, those moves are insane, yeah, that was Paul's brain at work. But it gets bigger, because he also worked with Sir Paul McCartney, an actual Beatle, someone who doesn't just work with anyone. And then there's Prince, literal music royalty, a perfectionist who demanded nothing but the best. And Paul was his choreographer. But wait, he also worked with Diana Ross, the Supreme herself, a legend who's been in the game longer than most of us have been alive. And the fact that all these diverse artists trusted Paul with their stage presence tells you something profound about his versatility and vision. But here's where it gets really emotional. The comment section on that Instagram post turned into a digital memorial that'll break your heart. Sam Smith, and we all know Sam doesn't just comment on anything, wrote something that's honestly making me tear up. They said, "This is heartbreaking. My thoughts and heart is with all of Paul's family and friends at this hard time. Paul was a light in this world." And okay, pause. When someone calls you a light in this world, that's not generic condolence language, that's real love talking. But Sam wasn't done. They continued, "I'll never forget his kindness and his sparkle. His magic will never leave the people he loved. Paul is everlasting." And that word sparkle keeps echoing in my head. Because you can teach someone choreography. You can teach them moves and counts and timing, but you can't teach sparkle. That's something you either have or you don't, and clearly Paul had it in abundance. But there's another comment that reveals even more about who Paul was as a human being. Sophia Beekster, and her words are honestly painting such a vivid picture of this man. She wrote, "That is so sad. Paul was so special, so talented, yes, but also warm and sweet and thoughtful and fun." And I want you to catch what she did there. She acknowledged his talent, but then immediately pivoted to his character, because apparently his personality was just as impressive as his professional skills. And she finished with, "I'm so sorry to hear he's not here anymore, sending lots of love to all who knew him." And the genuine grief in these messages is palpable. These aren't obligatory celebrity condolences. These are real people mourning a real loss. But here's where the One Direction connection becomes crystal clear and why so many fans are feeling this loss deeply today. Back in 2013, One Direction released their documentary film This Is Us. And if you were a Directioner, you absolutely watched this thing on repeat. You memorized every behind-the-scenes moment, every joke, every glimpse into their world. And Paul Roberts was actually in that film. He appeared on camera working with the boys. And there's actual footage that's now circulating again that shows exactly what kind of energy Paul brought to his work. So let me paint this picture for you because the clips are honestly gold. In the documentary, you can hear Paul directing the guys with this infectious energy. He's saying, "Here we go! Go! I'm taking the crowd with you." And you can hear the enthusiasm in his voice, like he's not just teaching them steps, he's teaching them how to own a stage, how to take 70,000 people and make each one feel like the show is just for them. And then he comments on someone's stage presence saying, "Love the stag, keep the stag, really good, like that, keep that in." And what I love about this is he's encouraging their individual personalities to shine through the choreography. He's not trying to make them all dance identically like robots. But here's the hilarious part that shows his sense of humor. Paul describes himself as their choreographer who gets bored, and then you hear him call out, "It's a bit of a free-for-all up that ramp, Harry, come on." And I'm dying because you can just picture Harry Styles probably goofing off or doing his own thing, which honestly tracks if you know anything about Harry's personality. And then Paul drops this absolute gem of a line that One Direction fans will totally relate to. He says they hate dancing with a passion, and it goes to a whole sort of different level. And okay, this is sending me because he's basically admitting that choreographing One Direction was like herding cats. But the way he says it, there's so much affection there, so much humor. He's not frustrated, he's endeared by it. And that's the mark of someone who truly loved their job and the people they worked with. But this documentary footage is now being watched through a completely different lens. What was once just a fun behind-the-scenes glimpse is now a precious archive of Paul's personality, his voice, his energy, his approach to his craft. And fans are rewatching these moments and realizing they witnessed something special. They saw a master at work, someone who could take 5 guys who admittedly hated dancing and turn them into a synchronized unit that could command stadiums. And that takes a special kind of patience, creativity, and let's be honest, magical energy that not everyone possesses. But here's what's really hitting me about Paul's legacy and why his passing at 52 feels so tragically unfair. This man was still in his prime, still had so many more performances to create, so many more artists to inspire, so many more stages to transform with his vision. And the fact that cancer took him is a brutal reminder that talent and kindness don't make you immune to life's cruelties. But the way he handled his battle, the grace that everyone keeps mentioning, that's become part of his final lesson to all of us. And I think there's something profound we can learn from how Paul Roberts lived and ultimately how he left this world. In an industry that often rewards ego, drama, and cutthroat competition, Paul apparently operated on a completely different frequency. Every single tribute mentions his warmth, his kindness, his thoughtfulness, his sparkle, and these things aren't you can fake. You can't PR your way into genuine love from your peers. And the fact that superstars like Sam Smith and legends like the artists he worked with all felt compelled to publicly honor him tells you that Paul Roberts wasn't just good at his job, he was good at being human. And honestly, in 2025, that's becoming increasingly rare. But there's another layer to this story that I think deserves recognition. Paul worked during an era when choreography was evolving rapidly, when stage shows were becoming more elaborate, more technically demanding, more visually spectacular. And he was right there in the thick of it, helping to shape what modern pop performances look like. Every time you watch a concert and think, wow, how did they coordinate all of that? There's probably someone like Paul Roberts behind it. Someone whose name you don't know, but whose vision you've absolutely experienced. And that's the bittersweet reality of being a choreographer. Your work is seen by millions, but your name often stays in the shadows. But not anymore. Not today. Today we're saying Paul Roberts' name and recognizing the massive impact he had on entertainment. I keep thinking about that phrase, full of grace, because it's appearing everywhere in relation to Paul. And I think it's the perfect summary of what true artistry looks like. It's not about ego or attention. It's about serving the art, elevating the artists you work with, and doing it all with dignity and joy. And from everything I'm hearing, that's exactly who Paul was. Someone who could work with the biggest names in music and still maintain his warmth, his humor, his humanity. And in an industry that can chew people up and spit them out, that's not just impressive, it's inspirational. But his battle with cancer adds another dimension to his grace. Imagine fighting that disease, knowing what's coming, and still maintaining your kindness, still being that light that Sam Smith described, still making sure your final days are spent surrounded by love rather than bitterness. And the fact that he died at home with his family peacefully, that was probably intentional. That was probably Paul choosing to control what he could control and ensuring his exit was on his terms, filled with the same grace that defined his entire life. And honestly, that's powerful beyond words. So where does this leave us, the fans, the industry, the people whose lives were touched by Paul Roberts either directly or through his work? And I think it leaves us with a responsibility to remember him properly, not just as the guy who choreographed